WWE Bad Blood 2024 takes place on Saturday in Atlanta. 5 matches on the card because it's a WWE PLE. Of course, there are 5 matches on the card, which has been the norm we know these days for these types of shows. But a very intriguing list of matches, I think, on paper with some significant storyline developments that could unfold in Atlanta. And before we jump into our predictions for all 5 matches, I keep telling you guys, remember, I am on Twitter now, /X, at WrestleBlake, if you want to follow me on there, sharing thoughts on current WWE, old school WWE, all that kind of stuff. So be sure to follow me there. Check out that link in the description below. Love to interact with you guys on there. So let's jump into this card. 5 matches, as we said, and let's start with a match that will be for the WWE Women's Championship, as it will be Nia Jax defending her title against Bayley. This is the long-awaited rematch for Bayley because she's probably been wanting to get this since, of course, she lost the title to Nia Jax at SummerSlam, which was a while back now, right? And so she finally gets her big opportunity here to try to reclaim her title, and we know it may not be that easy because it's not just Bayley against Nia Jax. We know that somewhere lurking will be the current Women's Money in the Bank briefcase holder, Tiffany Stratton, who was the object of Nia Jax's threats this past week on SmackDown, as it was Nia making it very clear to Tiffany Stratton that, you know, if this unfolds badly for her, which not just meaning this match, but this title run, I think was probably more of the indication of what Nia was thinking, that it was going to end bad for Tiffany Stratton as well. And we mentioned, you know, it made a lot of sense for Tiffany to win the Money in the Bank briefcase, and then it makes sense for Nia Jax to win the women's title because you have that tension added in now between the two. And I think that's where this match gets interesting because I am going to predict that Nia Jax is going to retain the championship here. It just seems to make sense. You know, she's really early in this run. I think they are really establishing Nia as sort of, this version of Nia Jax is better than the one, before this current go-around for her in WWE, right? She's already kind of reestablished her dominance, and now she's won the championship. This is not the old Nia Jax. This is the Nia Jax that can sort of dominate anyone and everyone, including her friend, Tiffany Stratton, if need be. And I think that's where you have to probably do something here to tease another cash-in with Tiffany Stratton. And, they kind of zoomed in on Tiffany's face on SmackDown last week after Nia grabs her by the throat and is sort of, again, making that threat towards her. Nia walks away. Tiffany stands there. You can tell she's a little bit pissed off about it. And so I would think there's going to be a scenario here where you've got to have Tiffany get involved. I don't think you can do this as just a straight-up match with Nia versus Bayley with no Tiffany Stratton involvement, because otherwise, this could have been a match that took place on SmackDown rather than this PLE. So you're going to have something here, I think, that moves the story forward in a big way, and we'll find out what that's going to be. But I am going to pick Nia Jax to retain the championship. I just think that, it's probably too soon to end her run here. But, I also think that the tease-in possibility of Tiffany Stratton, there has to be a scenario where she thinks about it or, perhaps something prevents that from happening. And maybe it's Nia herself. And we eventually get to Tiffany cashing it at some point in the future. I just don't know if it's going to be on this particular show. But, again, many possibilities anytime you have that Money in the Bank briefcase involved, and I do think it gets involved here somehow with Nia retaining the championship against Bayley. All right, speaking of women's championship matches, we've got another one as it's going to be Rhea Ripley challenging for the women's world title against Liv Morgan, another match that we know is a rematch from SummerSlam. And look, we know where this feud has gotten to, right? We are going to have Dominic Mysterio in a shark cage. That's where this feud is now, to where Dominic is not going to be able to get directly involved with this match. And this is the one where you kind of look at it on the surface and you're thinking, okay, this is sort of the opposite of what we're used to, right? Everything is sort of stacked in the babyface's favor here, and Rhea Ripley versus the heel, who has kind of everything stacked against her. Dominic is in a shark cage. Liv all alone, potentially, to have to finally, sort of face Rhea by herself here in this scenario, because remember, Dominic was involved at SummerSlam. So, because you're not going to have Dominic being able to physically get involved in this match, that seems to stack things in Rhea Ripley's favor, and Rhea's really had the upper hand on Liv for the most part, I would say, over the past little bit. But, we also know that Judgment Day has had their moments too, where they've been able to, leave the Terror Twins left laying. And could this be another scenario where that happens? You guys know my thoughts on this going into this match and the next match we're going to talk about. I've said it many times over the past couple weeks. You're not going to, I think, have a clean sweep one way or the other in terms of having the Judgment Day or the Terror Twins get both wins here. I think you've got to have a split. I think one person has to win one match, one has to win the other, and it probably continues the feud in some way for whichever person that is, right? And so I think this is an interesting setup here. And I think in this one, it's one where I just don't feel like they are finished just yet with whatever is going to ultimately be the thing that ends this big feud between Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan. The question is, how is Dominic Mysterio still going to get involved in this match? Even though he's in the shark cage, you've got to think that he's somehow going to impact how this match unfolds. And so I do think there will be a way he can do that, whether that is, slipping a special object or something like that to Liv somehow, some way. Even though he's in this cage, he can't get out, claustrophobic. Rhea Ripley brought that up, all these things. But you've got to believe that Dominic Mysterio may come out with a special weapon in his pants to somehow allow Liv Morgan to use that against Rhea Ripley for him to get the win. I know how that phrase sounded, but you get my point, is that Dominic could still play some shenanigans here and bring out some sort of object that will help Liv get the victory, or you could have someone else get involved here. Maybe it's a member of the Judgment Day, right? Or it could be someone else that we're not thinking of, because my whole thing with this has been, I think at some point very soon, this title has really just been Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley, right? There's been no one kind of on the, peripheral here thinking about sort of challenging for the championship right now. And I think that has to change soon. I think you want to start to get more people back in the rotation in terms of this championship. And I feel like this is kind of that point where do you have someone else get involved to where that happens? Liv still retains the title. Someone else comes in, maybe feuds with Rhea a little bit, or you have someone else come in, to kind of maybe look at as a possible next challenger. There are options here. But I think how they do this is going to tell us a lot more about how we can kind of see this moving forward. And when Rhea does eventually get that championship back, which you feel like is going to come at some point in the near future, it gives you a lot better idea of maybe who she's going to work with in another feud. How do you get Judgment Day, sort of onto something else for Liv Morgan and Dominic specifically? So there's a lot of interesting things that could play out in this match. But I am going to pick Liv Morgan to retain because I think they're going to keep this going at least for a little bit longer. And who knows? Maybe, you do kind of Rhea winning the championship at Crown Jewel or Survivor Series in some way. Those are possibilities there. So I'm going to pick Liv to win this one. And like I said, Dominic Mysterio still has to be able to do something here that's going to impact this match. And we'll find out what that is. So, all right, so we've talked about this one, and now that I mentioned, I feel like there has to be a split in terms of the winners and the losers between the Judgment Day and the Terror Twins, which means we get to this next match, which is Damian Priest versus Finn Balor. And so you probably had a pretty good idea of who I'm going to pick to win this match, because I picked Liv to beat Rhea Ripley. I am going to pick Damian Priest to beat Finn Balor. But I think what's interesting here is that you guys know, I've mentioned, I feel like Balor certainly needs this more in terms of establishing the Judgment Day moving forward. And I feel like this is one where they're going to have to, play this up, I think, in a very interesting manner to be able to come out of this feeling like, all right, both guys maybe leave this match in a strong spot, because I think just a straight-up win for Damian Priest over Finn Balor, yes, it's kind of a tale as old as time in pro wrestling, where the babyface finally gets his revenge on, the heel. But I still feel like you got to give Finn Balor something coming out of this, because this has been kind of the big match they built towards. And I don't know if this match feels as big as maybe I thought it would coming into this one. It's still been a big match, and it's still going to be presented as such in terms of this kind of being the match that has been really over a year in the making when you think about all of the different things that these two have done, whether it's, Priest costing Balor the championship opportunity, Balor costing Priest the championship. There are a lot of things that have played into this. But, certainly when you compare it to the other two matches we're going to talk about after this, it's not on that level. But I think what's interesting, like I said, is what's next for Priest, what's next for Balor. And I think that's why this makes it a little bit easier to pick Priest to win this one, because they do still see Priest as, a top-tier single star on the Raw brand. And, whether that is Priest, going back and challenging for the World Championship at some point soon or not, whether, maybe eventually he gets into the Intercontinental Championship picture. Those are all options you can work with Damian Priest because he now is a former world champion. For Balor, he still is one half of the tag team champions, right? And I think it makes a little bit more sense to where I don't know that they're getting ready to put Balor into a world championship picture or anything like that anytime soon, because I think this is where, as I said a minute ago, you have to eventually get these people away from each other. And it's not going to be easy to do because they've been so intertwined with each other for a long time, right? This is, your current iteration of the Judgment Day versus the former iteration of the Judgment Day. So you have to get through all this. And, it's not like this happened that long ago. I mean, it's really, August. So it's been a couple months when you go back to SummerSlam and you had the turns and all that. So we're still a little bit in terms of, in the middle of this thing. But I do think at some point you have to kind of take this to another level, whether that is, finding more creative ways to keep this feud going between this group, or you are kind of have everyone move on to something else. And I know there have been, different teases and such that may be coming out of this. Is this where the Judgment Day starts to move towards something with the Wyatt Six? Because that would be a likely, I think, candidate for the next program for the Wyatt Six. And, could that be something where somehow Balor has sort of led us to that direction, coming out of this? Because remember, the Wyatt Six, it's all been about the family and people who are betraying their family and those kind of things. And, well, Chad Gable was one of those people with Alpha Academy. Finn Balor, now one of those people with Judgment Day. So could we see Balor move on to something else, or really at least a good portion of the Judgment Day move on to something else beyond the feud with Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley? I think that is something that is, probably going to happen at some point soon. So because of that, I'm going to pick Priest to win the match. And I just think that, again, even though this is one that feels like maybe Balor needs it more, I do think that Priest winning this one, kind of getting his revenge. And also, keep in mind, too, this is the old school WWE way of thinking. Whoever's laying on the ground at the go-home show before the PLE, they're probably going to get a chance to get the victory, right? So the Judgment Day laid out Damian Priest on Raw, so you would think Priest gets his revenge here and gets a win over Balor. So I will pick Damian Priest, although I think these two matches are very difficult to pick, in my opinion, in terms of who wins these two matches involving the Judgment Day and the Terror Twins. All right, now we're going to get to the final two, and I know there's been a lot of debate as to what's going to main event this show. I've said before, it's really a matter of take your pick on, do you want the best match to main event the show, or do you want the match that's probably going to have the biggest angle to main event the show? If you want the best match to main event the show, it's going to be CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. Inside Hell in a Cell, the match we've all been waiting for. This is the culmination of a basically year-long feud between the two. And what's been most impressive, as we know, they pulled off the feud of the year in WWE only having a couple matches the past couple months, right? Because you had the injuries and all that, and so you couldn't get this match in the ring until you got to SummerSlam, and yet they've still been able to escalate the hatred between these two for all those months, and this is the moment that it was always leading to. It wasn't always just leading to the match at SummerSlam, which I know was a little disappointing for some people. It wasn't just leading to Punk winning the strap match. It was leading to this match. This is the big one that ever since they set course on this feud, which really, you think about, happened inadvertently at the Royal Rumble whenever it was Punk getting injured. This is the one that we knew you had to get to. This kind of match where it is going to be Hell in a Cell. These two are going to bloody each other. They're going to beat each other unmercifully. And who is going to be the person that is left standing? That's what this is all about. Inside Hell in a Cell. And I do think that this is going to be a match that absolutely delivers everything that everyone has wanted from this feud. And even though if you're a little disappointed by the SummerSlam thing and all that, the promos, they've been able to go back and forth. They've been able to keep people invested. And you saw what they set the tone on Raw on Monday in terms of how they're going into this match. And really, they'd set the tone a couple weeks before where both guys are talking about it's probably against their best interest to have this match, but they have to do it because they have to bring the other person down with them. If they're going down, they're bringing this other, person with them, right? That's what this is about. And so I thought, as I said, great exchange between the two on Monday on Raw, and I just think you're setting up for something special here. Not as much mystery in terms of who I'm going to pick on this one. I am going to pick CM Punk, probably like pretty much everyone else, because I do think this is where Punk wins this match against McIntyre. He gets, the big third triumphant win, and then I think this is where you start to move CM Punk back into someone who can legitimately challenge and or win the World Championship. And, when do they do a match between Punk and Gunther? Perhaps, who knows? Could it come as soon as Survivor Series? 1 year after CM Punk makes his return, does he get a world title shot at Survivor Series? Do you do something where Punk is a favorite to win the Rumble? Does Punk win the Rumble? Go on to challenge for the championship at WrestleMania 41. These are all options. And the thing is, if you're looking at it from Drew McIntyre's standpoint, Drew McIntyre can lose this feud, and Drew McIntyre's stock has still never been higher in WWE. You can say, yeah, he was a former, champion, he was at the top, but this is the best Drew McIntyre we have ever seen in WWE. And no matter whether he wins this feud or loses this feud, and really, if you think about it, he's going to have a lot more interesting, I think, character and storyline development to work with if he loses. Because then, how does he react to losing this feud against his biggest nemesis in maybe the history of his career? How does he react to that? I'm tuning in to find out, because I think that's what you want. You want to see how Drew McIntyre reacts after a must-win and he loses. What does he do from there? So these two are kind of, I don't think you're ever going to have Drew McIntyre and CM Punk ever on the same page in WWE for as long as they both continue to wrestle in their careers. But I think that's a good thing, because you have these two people who just hate each other, and you're going to see that on full display inside Hell in a Cell. I think Punk gets the victory, goes on to being involved in the world title picture. All right, and that does lead us to what I would think probably main events the show, but I don't know, because like I said, it's really all about, what do you want? Do you want the best match? Do you want the best angle? I think this will be a good match. Do I think it'll be as good as CM Punk and Drew McIntyre? No. But I do think this is the one that probably has the biggest stakes and storyline development, because it is Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns teaming up against Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu. Can they coexist? That's always been a trope that we've seen in WWE, maybe not to this magnitude, because you do have these two guys who, main evented the past two WrestleManias. Cody finally able to win the championship, finish the story at WrestleMania 40. And now Roman Reigns needs him to go up against Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, and the rogue version of the Bloodline. And what a fascinating story that is, because now we know that, and I think this is going to be the thing, right? It's a big match in and of itself because you're having these two team together. But I think like most matches, you still are probably going into this thinking, who is going to interfere and when are they going to interfere? And that's when the match really gets started. But at least you have the dynamic here where it's not all about that, right? It is about seeing how Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns are going to work together. And there's going to be some frustration that's going to come out between these two in this match. It's going to happen. But can they hold that off long enough to get a big win over Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu? This match, I think, seems very predictable to some people. But I'm not as convinced that this is predictable, because I think there are so many different ways you can go here. You could probably go the obvious way of having Cody and Roman win this match. They get frustrated at each other throughout. They win the match. And then, because they do win, that somehow leads you to match number 3 between Cody and Reigns, maybe as soon as Crown Jewel, a month from now, in Saudi Arabia. Maybe that's where they do the third match. But you could also go the direction of having Solo and Jacob Fatu win, where it is Jacob Fatu helping Solo perhaps pin Roman Reigns. That would lead you to a Roman Reigns versus Solo Sikoa one-on-one match, which you feel like they want to get to at some point. But we also know that match now does not feel as big as a Roman Reigns versus Jacob Fatu match. So is it that one where Solo's not been able to get the job done against Cody? He's not been able to get the job done against Roman. Is it Jacob Fatu who is the one that proves that he can either pin Cody or Roman Reigns? If he pins Roman Reigns, you've got your singles match set up between those two, although some people, I feel like at this point, wonder, is that going to be a WrestleMania 41 match? If you do Cody versus The Rock, do you do Roman versus Jacob Fatu there? That's a possibility. But you could also have Jacob Fatu pin the WWE Undisputed Champion, Cody Rhodes, because what's been the kind of story they've been telling? Each time that Cody has even been the one to say, Jacob Fatu, I want you to step up and get your shot at the championship. Solo says, no. And then when Jacob Fatu gets in the ring to go one-on-one with Roman Reigns after the steel cage match, Solo pulls him out. So is Jacob Fatu, is this his moment to shine where he is going to be the one that pins either Cody or Roman Reigns? You see all the different directions they can go here, and that's why I think I am very invested in seeing how they do this, because there are a couple different ways, and I don't know that there's necessarily a wrong way here. And remember, the other thing I brought up, the other possibility, is that if Cody and Roman win, I don't think they're pinning Jacob Fatu. I think they're pinning Solo Sikoa. And I know you can say, well, can Solo really afford another big loss? But I think that's the story, is that if you're going to eventually have this be something where The Rock comes back and The Rock realizes, you know what, Solo Sikoa is not who I thought he was. He's not getting the job done. Jacob Fatu is the man I need kind of, by my side to lead the way. Is that something where Solo just comes up short time and time again, and then Jacob Fatu starts to realize it? Solo's holding me back. He's not letting me get those opportunities, but yet he's losing at every turn. I think that's an interesting one. So I just feel like this is a little bit more unpredictable than maybe people want to think. But I also feel like Cody and Roman find a way to get the win here, because I just think that is probably something where, maybe you kind of have your last stand for the Bloodline after this. And like I said, I think it's probably more interesting to see how Jacob Fatu reacts if Solo loses again. And also, how quickly, when do you start to get The Rock back into the story? I don't think it's going to happen this month by any means, but, you need those things to start building up. And maybe it is more about Cody and Roman find a way to win, but it's still just Cody and Roman, right? The Bloodline attack after the match. They've still got the numbers advantage. And then that's where, what happens with Randy Orton? What happens with Kevin Owens? Does Kevin Owens and Randy Orton cost Cody this match? How does it all play into? Are we getting to that, War Games match with those four instead of the Bloodline versus the Bloodline? That's another question you have to ask here. And so there's lots of things. And maybe, if the Bloodline get the numbers advantage, there's no Orton, there's no Owens. Where's Jimmy Uso? Does he come back here? There's so many different things that you can work with, I think, in terms of how you do this. And I'm still going to pick Cody and Roman to win, but I'm not as convinced on that as maybe I was when they first announced the match, because I think there's a lot of interesting ways you can go about this. But curious what you guys think. How do you think this plays out in this potential main event? They're both main events. Let's call it what it is. Punk and McIntyre and the tag team match, Cody and Reigns versus the Bloodline. How's it going to play out? I want to know your predictions as always, and let me know your thoughts on all 5 matches on the Bad Blood card. Give me your picks in the comments below. As always, appreciate you guys. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button on your way out, and let me know your Bad Blood predictions. Who is going to walk out victorious in Atlanta?